Why is it that in the last 4 years in particular, since the year 2020, the cases of cannabis-induced psychosis have increased by over 50%? Now, this video is not intended to scare you or even try to convince you not to stop using cannabis. But who I am talking to are the people, the youth in this one, and adults, you can say, that are questioning getting off of it. And let me tell you, let me actually say one more thing too. This is not intended to anyone who uses cannabis for conditions such as if they have cancer, if they have chronic conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, HIV, any chronic condition, and if it's helping you on a day-to-day basis in regards to feeling better, physical and mental conditions, that's one thing. But just to be using cannabis for your own pleasure in general, I would say you need to start steering clear from, and especially the youth, because what is happening right now is there's a lot of cannabis-induced psychosis cases on the rise of people ending up in the ERs. And this is due, and this isn't to bash cannabis at all. It's to make aware that with these higher level THC strains that are coming out in, not only just in the dispensaries, but you have smoke shops as well that are putting stuff out there that aren't even tested, all these Delta, blah, 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 12, Delta, all these different types of products, and they're getting around all the different laws. That's going to draw people in, and more importantly, that's going to draw in the youth, because let's face it, I even look back when I was in high school, okay? Man, it feels like it was just yesterday. It's crazy. Anyway, when you're in high school, for example, you're trying, and this is most high schoolers, mentally, your frontal cortex, first off, for men in particular, is not developed until now they're showing till age 30, which is wild. Keep on pushing it. Who knows why? It might be because of the cannabis. But anyway, if your prefrontal cortex isn't developing till age 30, women, it's in their early to late 20s, and you're a little bit more of a rebel at that age. Let's put it that way. You're acting like you're a rebel. You're having impulse control problems. Once again, prefrontal cortex is not completely developed. It makes it it's a lot more tempting to do things that are law-breaking, if that makes sense. Like, oh, I'm going to do something that's illegal, or I'm going to drink before the age, I'm going to drink, I'm in high school. But, it's one of those things that most high schoolers deal with at some point, and it's part of growing up. But now with cannabis being legal and being so accessible to, I know it's 21 and older, but it's still so accessible to people. I mean, it's pretty much, at a federal level, it's now considered, now it's still legal at a federal level, but on a state level, state by state, more states are legalizing it, which don't have a problem with. But with that, you kind of have to look at the pros and cons of what are going to be going on with this. And one would think if you legalize it in a state, that would mean it'd push people away from the smoke shops. But unfortunately, what's happening is with cannabis being legal, all these smoke shops in the states where they are legal, they're finding other ways around it, using the hemp, making it into concentrates, into edibles. And they're able to make these products with these extremely, extremely high THC levels that even 5 to 10 years ago were not as high. I remember let's just go 10 years ago, getting a THC product that was above 30% was unheard of. Today, you go in and every recreational strain is like above 30%. And notice the trick. Most of the medical strains in all these dispensaries have the option of having more of a balance of lower THC strains and higher CBD. So in my opinion with it, it's ironic that the recreational across the board for people, they push out these like 30%, they've got those dabs and everything, THC strains, which is just, it's way too much. But then on the medical side, they have them, you can get even from like 10% to 20% THC, then at the CBD level, you can get some CBD in it as well. My whole push to this is if they're going to make if THC is going to be pushed to everyone, there needs to be more regulation in regards to the THC levels that can be sold. Because what's happening, people are going in buying these recreational strains, and and I'm not discrediting the bud tenders or what, the people at the front desk. The good thing about dispensaries is that luckily it's tested a lot of times, but I do think there needs to be more of a lower THC content, because with higher THC content, unfortunately, they're not doing assessments. They're not doing an assessment on you, and they're not supposed to. They're not asking you, do you have a history of schizophrenia, mental disorders in your family? Because I'm telling you, at younger ages, and you might first go, well, somebody going in, you got to be 21 and older. I mean, come on, let's be honest. People are buying it. It's a lot more accessible to high schoolers and stuff now. But if the wrong person gets that, and even an adult that gets that, especially men in their 20s, past 21, they might not even know that there is a history of schizophrenia in the family, for example, and then they use it, and that offsets your gene predisposition to potentially having a psychotic break, which I have seen plenty of times as well in the psych hospitals due to marijuana, and then add something else to it, another substance. It's a perfect combination for psychosis, a psychotic bout. But with that, I just want to let everyone know that just because something is legal, and this goes for really anything, it doesn't justify it. And people going, oh, I'm picking between the two, between alcohol and cannabis, which one is worse? You shouldn't be thinking, or which one is better? You shouldn't be thinking that way. If you ever have any sort of family history of mental health disorders, which today a lot of people do, and in particular, acute and chronic disorders like schizophrenia, even major depressive disorder, severe anxiety. I'm not saying that cannabis isn't a treatment for you, but there still are not enough studies yet in regards to the long-term effects on your own mental health, because you might be thinking right away when you're using it that for example, let's say you got off meth or alcohol or whatnot, what we were talking about last night, and you used cannabis, right? Okay, well, are you going to plan on using cannabis your whole life? Because in the meantime, yes, it might be helping, right? With your anxiety, with your cravings for whatever. But have you ever thought long term, so how are you going to get off this? Because it's expensive, but also with it, long term getting off it. I've seen plenty of people too that use it. And yes, cannabis obviously is easier to get off of than some things. I'm not bashing on it. But in the long term, with things such as if you're using it for specific things, if you're using it for sleep, anxiety, I've seen people who get off of it, and people might get mad at me for saying this. I really don't care at all or give a damn on this. It does have a withdrawal, and not just a psychological withdrawal. I've seen people who've gotten off of cannabis before, in particular, these high THC concentrations today, the high concentrations, where people getting off of it, they're having physical withdrawals, they're having severe sweats, nausea, panic, really bad stomach aches, and it's lasting. And not even just that, the post-acute withdrawal from it. Sleeping is very, very, very rough. So just think about it from that. I understand it might be better than something else, but ultimately the best route would be to not use it. There's more and more studies coming out on cannabis, and especially, and I'm not hating on, once again, these low THC levels, it's these high THC levels, the higher ones, that there are more studies coming out. Once again, long term we still don't know, but coming out even in the intermediate or even, the middle amount of time in regards to there's a lot more psychosis going on. There's a lot more mental health problems coming out about it in regards to it. Like if you didn't have a history of anxiety or depression before, you use this high percentage of THC, and you have a severe anxiety attack. You think you're having a heart attack, and that leads to, unfortunately, not even a psychotic bout. I'm not saying that always happens, but it just leads to, it can flip that switch in your genes in general, which can maybe not even in particular offset you, but it could have effects long term on your kids. That's the thing, we don't know yet these long term effects completely, but just be cautious. If you're going to be using things such as cannabis, make sure, and especially if you're very new to it, make sure you're not using THC. Don't be using above, I would even say, 15% at first. Because once again, the cannabis from 10 years ago, completely different than the cannabis today with those high THC levels. So be cautious. Also, I'm just going to hit on as well, if you're trying to get off of cannabis, let's say you're trying to quit, because as I just said previously, there are withdrawal effects from it. If you're trying to get off of cannabis, I recommend a similar approach to getting off of things such as even methamphetamine, benzos, alcohol. I recommend, now you can, if you have to cold turkey, you're going to have to, but I recommend a taper if that's an option. A lot of times if people, for example, are going in, they got to quit for a drug interview. How do I get it out of my system real quick? Well, you can't taper off of it. You're just going to have to stop. But I personally, and this is once again educational purposes only, with today's cannabis, personally, if you needed to get off of it, let's say over, if you'd been using it for 6 months to a year every day, and also I'll do a separate video on the edibles, on cannabis edibles, because that's a whole nother ball game as well. And I'll include the oils with it as well, but let's just real quick hit on the flowers in particular. I know I've hit on some of the other stuff, but let's stick with that real quick. And I'll do a separate video on the withdrawal from those and potentially the best way to get off of that. But if you've been using for 6 months to a year, let's just stick with the flower, or maybe even some of, not the dabs or the oils that have super high, like 100%, just the flower. I would recommend a taper. And you might go, well, how do you taper it? Well, the good thing about the dispensaries is, at least if you're like, okay, I'm going to quit, and you go in and you've been using whatever, if you have the money to buy even a quarter ounce or whatnot of it, set aside, a gram, let's say you've been smoking a couple of grams a day, every day from that, just a little bit less over a month period. So when you get to the end of it, when you get to the very end, it'll make it a whole lot easier. So what I would do is, over like a long taper would be a month. Honestly, you could do it over a week to a week and a half, the taper, if you had to do a quick one, but just make sure every time you're using less and less. And this is for smoking it. So whatever you're using, try to, if you can do it over a longer taper, you can do it a little bit slower. But the key to tapering anything is just making sure you're not going back up. So let's say you find it's really hard. You're like, man, this is hard, but you're pushing through. Just make sure you don't go up on the taper. Make sure you continue to go down. So let's say now you're only doing a gram a day. The key is, if you've made it to a gram and you've been a week and a half dropping, just do not go back up. It will get easier. But I recommend a taper. I also recommend drinking plenty of water and getting a lot of electrolytes, which I know I've hammered in, because the more water you get in you, the more in general you can push some of those toxins out. And I know people go, there are studies that show that, sweating and sweating and saunas and stuff don't help. Let me tell you, people might say that, but it does help, because it just helps speed up that metabolism. Exercise, it might not push those toxins out. You have to give your body time in general. But what it does do is it temporarily increases your metabolism to where it will push out some of those toxins in general. Not right away through your sweat, yet sweating is still obviously good where it pushes out toxins in general. But if you're working out every day, over time, you will start to push them out. Not right away, but over time you will start with an increase in your metabolism. Same with eating foods. If you're going to be going off of cannabis as well, one thing is, do not eat foods that are high in unhealthy fats, so unsaturated fats. Stay away from butters, olive oil a little bit, whatever. But the whole key is like eating healthy carbs, and if you do need, obviously getting protein as well. But the key is to stay away get away from unhealthy fats. Getting plenty of healthy carbs, and really just cutting out the sweets as well. That's another thing. And the big thing out of even food, if you're eating candy, cutting out the sodas, the carbonated sodas, in particular the dark sodas, those ones, because with that actually can unfortunately have an effect of where you hold on to the THC in your system, which will also inadvertently make it to where it'll be harder to pass a urine test. You would think, oh, it makes me go to the bathroom more, I'm peeing more. Yeah, you're peeing your water out, but you're holding what you hold when you're voiding a lot. You'd say you're getting it out, but a lot of times that actually, what happens is you end up holding those toxins in, because your body works that way in regards to where it holds that sodium, potassium in instead of pushing it out. So just because you're going to the bathroom a lot does not mean you're pushing it out of your system. But the next video we do, we will do a video as well. I don't know if we'll do it tomorrow or whatnot, but we'll do one eventually on the edibles as well. And the dab stuff in regards to the withdrawal from that. And once again, you might be wondering, why are you covering this? It has to do within the psychiatric field today, what's on the rise. All these videos I'm doing in regards to the street drugs and whatnot, it's stuff that is on the rise that with patients coming in. And I'm doing this in a way to where this is non-judgmental. This is what I see and what patients tell me. I'm going to tell you everything that I see. I'm not holding anything back, and this is very non-judgmental toward, there's no judgments made toward anyone. The key is, if you're watching these, or even you have the thought of getting clean, that's what matters. And that's how you execute, is through your own motivation of it. And I hope these videos can help you. Love you all. Like, subscribe, comment. That is your daily dose of mental health. Once again, I was demonetized for some straight bull crap. Reuse, no warning. YouTube actually wants you to push out, do more shorts and whatnot, and then they do that to you. But I'm still going to do shorts, but I guess I just need to make sure I'm talking and whatnot. I still am doing running every day, but we're going to focus a lot right now on just drug use on the rise, mental health disorders, and also just a lot of other random drugs in general that have a lot of side effects as well that we've noticed. Like I did one on Ozempic, because I want this to apply to everyone, just in general. Love you all. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Have a great week coming up.